Well, thank you everybody for attending this Zoom event this evening. And thanks for your interest in an important local topic, how COVID-19 is affecting high school sports. I am Mark Weber, Executive Director of the Eden Prairie Community Foundation. We are a nonprofit that for nearly 40 years has been filling unmet needs in Eden Prairie, helping people who are experiencing hardship and doing all that we can to make Eden Prairie better. Much of what we do is raise money and issue grants to local nonprofits that are working to solve local problems. And over the last 5 years, we've generated over $1 million in philanthropy. On behalf of the foundation, welcome. This event will be limited to 1 hour, and we're asking all of our attendees to remain muted so the focus is on our speakers without the distractions of background noise or people breaking into the meeting. For similar reasons, we're using speaker view rather than gallery view, and we will be allowing video just for the speakers. This is designed to be a chat between our two speakers that gets to the heart of the pandemic and high school sports. We hope it's informative to you. You're invited to submit questions via Zoom's chat function, and I'll be checking on those from time to time and relay them to our speakers, and we'll take as many of those as we possibly can, given the time allowed. The speaker series we're holding this fall is being sponsored in part by the foundation's two partners, Flagship Bank and Eaton Corporation. And so we thank them for their support. Our guests today are Mike Grant and Dan Huss. Mike is perhaps best known as the state title winning football coach at Eden Prairie High School, but he is also the high school's activities director, and he's been teaching and coaching for more than 40 years, and is also a winner of the John Gallardi Legacy Award from the Minnesota chapter of the National Football Foundation. Dan Huss is the former and longtime and award-winning sports editor of the Eden Prairie News, a 46-year-old community newspaper that was unfortunately closed last April. If all of Dan's sports stories and published photos were laid end to end, they would circle the earth 3 times. Actually, I just made that up, but it would be a big, big number. So let's leave it at that. So welcome, Mike and Dan. Take it away. And again, just a reminder to people, if you would like to ask questions as we go, you can do so in the chat function. So Dan, take it away.
Well, Mike, in early March, the Eden Prairie boys basketball team played a section semifinal against Prairie Lake in the Eden Prairie gym, a packed gym, standing room only gym. A week later, they were scheduled to play in the section finals, and it was announced they would play before no fans. And then within maybe 12 hours, the game was canceled altogether. At the same time, the girls basketball tournament was canceled, I believe, after the semifinals. Was that really where the COVID-19 started to impact high school sports in Minnesota?
Sorry, Mike, you're on mute.
There we go. All right, Dan, that's a great question. I don't know, to everyone, does it seem like yesterday or does it seem like 5 years ago? Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago, March, where we started this journey with COVID. And then sometimes it feels like it was just yesterday. I remember sitting at Concordia College in St. Paul, and at halftime of our girls' consolation game, State High School League approached me and said, this is the last game of the tournament, of the state girls basketball tournament. And win or lose, we're going to be done. At the same time, we got that cancellation of our outstanding boys basketball team that was undefeated and expected to win a state title. And that section playoff game was not going to happen. It certainly was the beginning. And I know everybody right at that time started thinking, how long is this going to last? You know, right away, are we going to have spring sports? Are we going to have summer? Heaven forbid, we're going to play in the fall. And here we are, you know, months later. I don't know that we're any better off, certainly worse off in terms of the loss of life, the number of people that are being infected every day, at least by our test numbers. But yet we're trying to hold high school sports. So I think that was the beginning and started all of our questions.
If that was the beginning, I mean, you mentioned you didn't know what was going to happen going forward, and we've talked since then. You know, that's the problem with this. You don't have a history to look on. You know, this is what happened when this happened, you know, 10 years ago, or this might happen, you know, in the future. Did you really think it was going to shut down spring sports and impact fall sports?
You know, I didn't know. We were planning to try and play spring sports. I remember being in AD meetings in April and May where we were trying to put together a shortened season in May, like that we could get our baseball and lacrosse and track and all of our spring sports in. And I think, Dan, you hit it. You know, a lot of people are critical of this or that, of decisions that are made. And the one word that I always come up with and is used often is the idea of grace in this, because like you said, we have no history to base decisions on, and we have no idea what's to come. And you're trying to make a decision about, you know, each season of sport, and do you let them play, and how many fans, and how many, all of that. And you have no idea what is right. And you know, all the people, whether you agree with them or not, we have to say everyone's trying to do the best thing. But yeah, it's a tough situation to try to plan and make decisions when, you know, it's not about how much money somebody makes or something. It's about people's health, and your decisions are impacting people's health. And, you know, that makes it even tougher to make decisions.
I know my wife sat on the COVID command center at Fairview, and that's what she kept always saying. I mean, it's called nouveau. This is a nouveau virus. It's a new virus. We just haven't seen anything like this. So not knowing, I mean, personally, not knowing what may or may not happen, did that affect what you were going to do? I know you're going to resign from your AD position at Eden Prairie on January 1st. I'm guessing you could have done the same thing at the end of the school year.
Yeah, it certainly impacted it. You know, I could have retired, I don't even know, 2 or 3 years ago. But there are things I'm sure there's many people here, you know, I'm 63 years old, and I keep thinking in 17 years, I'm going to be 80. And at 80, what am I going to be doing? Right. And so there's a lot of things I'd like to do, you know, and have some freedom to do that. So it did impact. I certainly thought about it last year, but I also thought, what a tough time. I really believe that for school administrators right now, there's nothing like it. This is the hardest time in the history of our country to be a principal, to be an administrator at the district level, to be an AD. There's nothing like it, because when 9/11 happened, when wars are about, you can rally people together and hug each other and care about each other. And here we are in the middle of the crisis where we're saying you have to stay away from everybody. And as social people, it's hard. It's just that hard. And so I'm talking to Rob Virgin, our principal. I said, I'll stay on, but let's have a conversation on what the end game looks like. And I don't know. We went back and forth, and I thought, well, by January 1, hopefully we'll have our winter seasons underway, and maybe there can be a natural succession. And we have outstanding people in our student activities office that are there that can handle it. I figure it'll take them 3 weeks to know I'm gone. That's what I figure.
So was there certain things that you had, maybe it was scheduling, or certain things that had to be done before, the end of last year and January 1st, that you feel better about where the activities office is at?
Well, I think that schools were waiting for decisions made by, the governor and by Department of Health. So we were kind of held hostage about what we could do. We didn't really know. And they're waiting to see what numbers are in COVID and the number of positive cases in a day or number of deaths or whatever key numbers they're tracking. So we had to wait and wait and wait and not know what summer was going to look like, or what even the end of the spring and was going to look like. And then summer was relatively normal. There were a lot of camps going on. We certainly had our football camps, and I thought the school district did a great job in really keeping that safe. We only had one small incident with COVID, but generally our camps and everything went really well. And that led to, are we going to have a fall season? And that was decided on August 4th. And so we don't know. It's going to start August 17th, and we don't know until August 4th that we're going to have seasons, and how long they're going to be, when the start dates would be, all of those things. And so we obviously started late, and then they added some twists in there that you could have fall football practice for 3 weeks or 12 days and volleyball. And so now you've got, a late start, shorter season, all those things. So now as an AD, what you have to do with all the other ADs is figure out a schedule, because it won't look like it did before. So everyone had to get together, redo all the schedules. Then you had to get together and says, what does it look like for a swim meet? What is the state going to allow in the pools this year? No fans. So how do we have swim meets with no fans, and what does that look like? Where do the kids have to sit? There's so many things. How do we allow people in or not allow people in? How do you stream it? Don't stream it? All those questions. How does practice down to the detail? How many kids can be in each lane? Normally you just load a lane and kids are going by each other, and we didn't know until late that you could only have 4 in a lane. See, it sounds like I know about swimming, doesn't it, Dan? You're laughing.
Well, you're talking about, my daughter swims in college, and she's got a pod of 8 swimmers. It's the same 8. They practice together. I don't know how many lanes they have, but the things you're talking about are the same things that I hear from Britt when she calls home. And it's different.
It's so different. And those are the things people don't know about how to do. And then, I met with each fall team on the first day to talk about what is our, what is going to be our protocol when you come to practice. Well, you got to wear a mask. You got to have a mask on, and you walk in, and which is different than all of their travel teams and all of their club teams. You got to have a mask there until you start exercising, and then you have to put it back on. Now, are we 100% on that? No. I mean, I'm telling you, the hardest part for me, I thought this summer and fall, was these kids had not been in school to be trained how to wear masks. So, I mean, when we cut off, we were done in the spring. We went to distance learning, and none of these kids had that training. So in the summer, we were trying to train kids. What does 6 feet look like? I mean, when you come together as a team, how do you spread out and be 6 feet? How you got to wear a mask. Well, a lot of kids didn't even have masks or gaiters. I mean, we would bring them to our stuff and hand them out because kids didn't even think about it, because in their world, they were not living with the idea of wearing masks all summer. And so we were the first ones, the coaches in the summer programs, of training kids how to wear masks and how to do the right thing. Now we've been in school for a month and a half or whatever it's been, and the kids are used to wearing masks. They know in school they got to wear a mask. I know I'm more comfortable wearing a mask, because I wear it all day in my office and, in coaching now. And we had to train kids to do that. Well, then they added football, and that was a late thing. And they added volleyball, and we'd already been practicing for 2 weeks. And they said, well, just keep practicing, and then we'll start on that date. And now you have all the protocol for all that. Protocol for soccer, 250 people only. How do people get tickets? How do they, who do we give tickets to? Who's allowed in? And so all those meetings after meeting after meeting, which gets me back to why I didn't retire last spring, was I just thought that it was a responsibility I had to help be part of the solution. And certainly there's other people that are doing much more than me in terms of figuring that out, our cross country meets, all those things. So I think that we'll get the hockey schedule ready to go. I'm the hockey coordinator for the conference, and we'll get our coaches up to speed there. And then in January 1st, I can go to the cabin and sit at the cabin and, watch the birds on the bird feeder.
Related to your AD position, you are resigning as the activities director, but you're going to continue to coach.
Yeah, that's going to be, I feel like I still have a lot to give in coaching. I love being around the guys. I mean, my best 2 hours of my day are when I'm out there on the football field with our kids, and they I'm 63, and I honestly, I feel like I'm 25, when I'm out there with them. It doesn't feel any different than when I started 42 years ago coaching. And so, I want to continue to do that. There's some kids that I know coming up through the system that I want to continue, have the opportunity to coach. And a lot of my health stays good, and, and everything, else is, if the new AD doesn't drive me crazy, or, I'll continue to coach. And, I love Eden Prairie, and I love our kids, and I love, love is a accurate word of how I feel about our football players. And it's going to be, it'll actually, I think I can do a better job coaching football than I do as the AD. When you're the AD, you have to always back off from promoting football and from, making it a big thing, because other people would see it as all he cared about is football or whatever. And so, a couple of times coaches have said, well, football gets everything. I said, name one thing that football has that other things don't. They can't name anything, but they, that's the perception. So now I can just concentrate on football.
To get back to the end of the school year, how tough was it to see some of these seniors not have the closure that they were hoping for?
Well, we were close to, a number of sports. I'm dealing with the athletes that did not get their spring season. And, for so many of them, they might be single sport athletes, and they're softball or baseball or boys tennis, go down the list, of all the ones, and they just didn't get to do that. It was heartbreaking. It was probably because we didn't see the kids every day, because they were on distance learning. Maybe that was a little easier. I don't know. Parents probably had to deal with the disappointment more than we had to do. I thought the turnaround really came for us. I thought our district did a great job, and our principal, Rob Virgin, did a great job of putting together a graduation late in July that we finally were. I remember being there, and I was helping check all the kids in, and it was like, wow, is this great to have kids back on the school grounds? And I think we were at about, I was keeping track, I think 74% of our kids participated, our seniors, and to have them back on, out in the stadium. And I think, I don't know if we did 8 or 9 graduations or 10 or whatever in a row. But each of the kids that came to my table to check in were excited and happy to be back at school. And so I think that was like the turnaround. I think June and July were really depressing for kids. I I think the seniors, and then when they found out what their college might be like too, that they're going to go and be all online. They're traveling across the country to go to a really cool university, and they're going to be online learning from their dorm room there. But the graduation was great. And then we started bringing more kids on campus. And while the energy is not the same, it's great this fall to be able to watch and see these kids perform.
Yeah, I know in my family, my oldest graduated from college last spring, didn't get to walk in her graduation. Her diploma came when she was already back in Iowa, and it just.
Wait, is this the one that you talked to me about being colicky when she was a baby?
That's the swimmer. That's Britt.
Okay. I can remember distinctly you coming in every day to the athletic, and seeing me and going, she's colicky every night. And, boy, you and I have come a long way together here.
Yes, we have. Was it when they allowed athletes and coaches back on the fields in the summer, were you ready? Did you think this was something you could do?
With the camp stuff and our training, you asked me something, did I think? I had no idea if we were going to be able to pull it off and do it safely. And, we had a lot of protocols in place. Like we moved our weight room for the summer, and, our football kids obviously lift very hard in the summer, and that's a big time for them. We moved everything outside. The district was great in, providing resources. And so we had 4 different pods outside in different garages, and in different areas that we were able to lift. So we adapted that way. We were never in the weight room all summer. And we just now are moving back in the weight room. Our kids lifted even in beginning of football in there. And so we had to change and adapt and figure out how to do it. And, it's a testimony to, I think, really, really good people that were planning and thoughtful about how to do this safely. And, well, we're probably not 100% perfect on it. I think people have done a great job of getting these kids back in a safe way.
What has been the biggest challenge? Is it getting used to wearing masks? Is it figuring out how to travel? Is it?
Well, it's all those things. It's all the new. We sometimes sit there and we go, oh crap, I forgot about that. That's an issue. Just the idea of, how many buses will it take to go to Minnetonka last Friday night for a football game and do it safely?
How many did it take?
Well, luckily, the state upped it at one point. I think, if my memory's right, we were at it was only going to be 20 kids per bus. All right. Or even, and now it's, I think 33 or 34. So we took 4 buses, to make it safe. And, but we were heading to, for volleyball here last week to St. Michael, I think. And we were traveling 1 bus all the way to St. Michael, Albertville. And we had to travel 3 different pods of kids. So 3 different buses there and back, right, out to St. Michael. So that got a little more expensive than normal. We've reduced the weeks by 30% and the number of contests by 20%. So maybe that's what some things people don't even know, that the state high school league dropped the number. We're only playing 6 varsity football games in the regular season. Everything went down by 20%. And so let's take basketball. I think we've gone from 25 to 18 for the year. They're starting the season in the winter a little bit longer, or keeping them fairly long, because they're worried about situations where people have to cancel or a game, and then they might be able to reschedule later in the season. Just like the NFL playing tonight, Tuesday night game, because they had to reschedule the game. So when you ask what's the most difficult thing, I think it's the most difficult and emotional part is when you're talking to kids, because it's always about relationships. I mean, in the end, it's about relationships. And this week we had a COVID incident. This is the hardest time in my 42 years of coaching. And I think, we had some of the tested positive. Okay. Well, now you have to do what's a close contact. So we spent, I mean, literally a full day of looking at film and who was a close contact with that person in the game. So right now we have about 29 football players that on the erring on the side of, making sure we're safe. I mean, literally kids that were around them was around this person for 20 seconds, in that game situation. We've quarantined them from us for 2 weeks. It might not even be exactly what the state says, but it's on the side of being safer than sorry. And that's the hardest thing ever, is to tell kids there's nothing you did. You happen to be next to this kid who, for that small amount of time. And because of that, you got to go home. And, to see kids cry, to talk to parents on the phone as they're crying, and they're not crying because they're mad, and they're understanding what we're doing. But, these sports are so important to these kids, that that's the hard part of having to deal with those persons. We can figure out schedules, and we can figure out how to bus, and we can figure all those things. It takes a lot of work, but in the end, it's about those relationships.
What about the testing? The NFL tests every day. I don't know what the Big Ten plans to do, but I mean, you guys don't have the money to test students or players.
Yeah, I mean, we do the temperature check each day, and and all these months since June, I've never had anybody have a higher temperature ever above 99. I've never had one, and I've probably taken the temperature of 1,000 people since June. We do the questionnaires, we ask them, and more of it is the education that if you're feeling poorly or have any of the symptoms that you need to stay home. And we've had kids who say, you know what, I'm not sure what I have, but they go to the doctor and they're fine. They might have strep throat, or they might have all the other things that come with fall weather and allergies and all those things. So certainly we can't afford to test. I think I talked to Rick Spielman at one point, and he said they're spending, it was like $80 million on testing in the NFL. Well, I don't think we have that money for that. We got a lot more kids than they would have. So we got to really trust our parents, trust our kids, and err on the side of caution when we got to make a decision.
And that's the problem with this virus. I mean, it symptoms could be, pink eye could be pink eye, or it could be a COVID symptom.
Well, I thought that was interesting when when the Vice President Pence last week was at the debate, and he had a little red in his eye, and one of the news programs zoomed in on it right away, going, is that a COVID symptom that Vice President Pence has or not, on that? Yeah, you don't know. And many of the kids have no symptoms, and many of the people have already had it, and didn't know they had it. And, I think it's and now this is my uneducated, but I, watch a lot of news, and I read the paper, and, I follow it closely. It feels like we've entered kind of another stage now, where before we could really say, okay, they got it from that person. But if somebody gets it now on our teams or whatever, they could have gotten it in a lot of different places. It wouldn't have to be someone that they knew, but that it's in the community now. And I think they're calling it community spread or whatever. And so, as much as we do the tracing and our assistant principal got hired this year, Clayton Ellis, he got hired to be an assistant principal, and he's a head of COVID investigations in the building. And reporting to the state, and he does a great job of trying to figure out who were the close contacts of that person.
Say, Mike and Dan, if I could interject with a question that's come from our audience that's kind of related to what you're talking about. It's really about whether you have a sense, Mike, of whether kids are following protocols when they leave school and go home. And to that extent, do you feel it's your responsibility to encourage them when they're not at school to be following the right kinds of guidelines?
We talk about it all the time. We talk about that discipline. We tell them that, the NBA, they went into a bubble because they didn't trust their guys to, to do the right thing all the time. The WNBA went into a bubble. The NHL went into a bubble. Major League Baseball didn't, and they had some really bad situations early in their season. The NFL, relatively good, even though their guys are not going home, are not in a bubble. So we talk about that discipline. And I think they're doing okay. I mean, I look at that. That's really a parental responsibility as well. To say, when kids go, I want to go to sleepover, I want to go to this or that or this event, to be able to say, that's not a wise thing to do. That when you go to those things, the chance of getting that illness obviously go up. So we talk to our kids all the time. Now, having said that, I don't know how many times I see them after practice. They got their masks on and they all take them off, get 4 or 5 guys get in the car and they head out. And you take a deep sigh and you just kind of go, okay, well, we haven't quite got it perfect right now of what we should be doing. But on the other side of it is, people got to live too, and we can't send them home and sit them in their room, as much as I'd like to do that to the whole team, with football. We just know that's not realistic. And so we ask them to be smart, to social distance when they're at something, to wear a mask. So far the numbers have been good. I don't know, I guess I think good, because I think it could be much, much worse. And, where we were shutting down school or something. But I think, again, the district's done a really good job. When you walk into school, I tell our parents this all the time. Like we had Eden Prairie Football Association had a fall season. And I think, as far as I know, there was one COVID case that wasn't transmitted on the team, but got positive from somewhere else. And those kids had the greatest time. They loved it. They loved playing football. They were out there. I saw a lot of games this fall. I would go at night and visit with people. And it was really a positive thing. If we can find a way to do this safely, activities are really important. So I think kids, as we move on and we have these little scares, kids also realize how, this could happen to me at any time. If I let my guard down, or even if I don't let my guard down, it might happen.
Thank you, Mike.
Now, Mike, you said you had a COVID incident on your team right now, affecting what, 25, 30 kids,
Yeah.
or something like that. How, Rosemont isn't playing for 2 weeks. How is what's happening on your team different than what happened down there?
Well, I don't know the Rosemont history. I've just heard that they had multiple kids in the team, multiple kids. And when you have one, you can kind of figure out who were the close contacts on that. None of those kids have tested positive. It's actually too early to even test them. So we haven't had any positive tests or transmissions from the team. But part of the reason is, it happened on a Friday and a Saturday, and so we were able to not come into the week of practice and find out somebody practiced for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then they tested positive. So I don't know, I don't know the history of Rosemont. I know, as all ADs are saying, just kind of by the grace of God, that could be us anytime. You can't point fingers or blame on anybody. There's nobody at fault in any of this, and that's the grace I talked about too, that you just don't know. But I will tell you that in talking to the State High School League this summer, with all the things that were going on in the camps, they found that almost every case that ended up on a team, that was practicing in the summer, came from tournaments out of state, whether it was baseball or softball or basketball tournaments. That people were going out of state to North Dakota, South Dakota, where the protocols were not in place. We had teams going to Kansas City, to Iowa, to all over the place, and youth teams, younger teams, kids in 5th and 6th grade up through high school. And when they went there, they just didn't have the protocol that Minnesota had and that our school had. And they ended up being positive because of those because of being at those places. So what the league told me is we haven't seen much transmission within teams in Minnesota. And I think part of it is I think schools and are on top of it right away and are not letting it get out. Knock on wood, I'm saying that, but again, I think our schools do a great job. I was saying that I tell the parents that the safest place they can be right now, a high school kid, is at their high school or at their high school practice. Because when you walk around our school, our kids are socially distanced. Our kids are wearing masks. Our kids are all, when they're there, I don't know that they can be in a safer place. When they walk out at 2:35, the masks are coming off, they're getting in cars and we don't know where they're going or what they're doing. And they might be going to work, they might be going someplace else. When they go to a practice, we're pushing that social distancing mask as well. And the kids are getting better. When our football team comes together at the end of practice, our kids literally are talking and moving to be 6 feet apart as the old days when they used to huddle together. So it looks very different at practices and certainly at games.
What about games and high fives and, hugs and stuff like that? I mean, have you said nope?
Well, we just tell the guys it's so hard, I will tell you. And I'm watching, in the NFL, and they got more rules than anybody about this stuff. And they're all high-fiving and hugging. And I can't figure out the NFL, how the coaches all have to wear masks. These players don't have to wear them at all. I don't understand any of that. But, yeah, you don't see the high fives and you don't see, on the bench, that type of stuff. Does it still happen? Yeah, just because I think the emotion of the game, kids will still do it. But we're certainly hoping, like we have dots that we put out on our sidelines and, we spread out and we want them on those dots. And you can, in football now, you can go to the 10-yard line. Okay. So I have a coach dressed as a player at each 10-yard line to try and, coach from down there. Coaches can't go that far. That's a joke. It was a bad joke, but I'm just kidding because someone's going to write that Grant's got players on the sidelines. And so the players are getting better every week at social distancing and that's a good thing.
What about, it was all when football and volleyball came back, it was all let them play. Is it been, when sports came back this fall, there are no postseason tournaments. Is that, do the kids really just want to play, or is that a big deal, not being able to chase a championship?
Well, you got to understand there's probably half the teams that have, maybe 80% of the teams that have no hope in playing in the championship. I mean, seriously. I think it's a big deal to our kids, because our kids dream of state championships. They've seen our 11 state championships and we've shown them highlights from all of them and they've seen it and they want to be part of it. But, it's to be seen whether this was a good decision to do it now and not in March, because we're going to find out if we can make it through this season and into the playoffs. If a week or two from now, we all of a sudden have huge spikes in numbers and they cancel football and you've played 2 games. It's tough. I had a call from a school in South Dakota who called me just to get information. He said, is anybody looking for games? Because their week 1 opponent had to cancel on them because of COVID in South Dakota. Their week 2 team canceled on them. So they were a really good program and they hadn't played the first 2 weeks. And they didn't know if they were going to even get a game in this year. So like I said at the beginning, no one knows what's going to happen. And we're kind of like week by week here thinking, we got through this week. Let's see if we can get another weekend.
How hard has that been? You were going to play football and volleyball in the spring, and then all of a sudden it was in the fall, no fans inside, and all of a sudden you can have fans inside. When they walk back these decisions, are you surprised by anything anymore? Even the postseason, for example, I could see, that might change.
Well, yeah, there's a petition right now out there for what sport did I hear that today?
Swimming. I think there was one for swimming.
Well, there was one for swimming, and now and then certainly cross country was pushing for it, and then I might have been soccer that they can, are saying we can do a 2-week postseason and get to a state championship, like they normally would have. It is really hard. It's really hard for ADs that are so concrete sequential that they have everything planned and written down and all of that, and they do it ahead of time, and then that gets changed. It's out the window, and it about kills them. I think we've learned to say, okay, we're going to plan, but wait, it might get changed tomorrow.
Is there a chance that some of these an association might bring, say, the Final Four to a conclusion outside of the high school league?
Well, I don't know about that. I think there's a whole bunch of insurance problems and everything else if you try to do something outside of, not from under the umbrella of the state high school league. Plus, I think districts philosophically might not agree with it at all either. We're members of the state high school league, and we're going to abide by what their decisions are. And that's why, when they decided we weren't going to have football, then we were going to have football. Before that vote, what I told our kids, because we were practicing at the time, remember we were in the fall practice period, not in the fall playing period. It's how you look at it. I told them, I said, you know what? Eden Prairie football, we'll play wherever they tell us. If they tell us we're playing in a parking lot on, Saturday morning, we're playing. It doesn't. And the kids just, whatever they decide, we'll be there. And I think that's the attitude you have to have, rather than say, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that. Our kids were fired up. We're thinking, all right, if we play in March, we'll play in March. If we're going to play now, just tell us where to be and we'll be there. And I think that's the attitude we took.
Did you have any kids or coaches opt out and say, I just can't do this now?
We had some coaches, honestly, that are older coaches or that had really sensitive jobs where they go into hospitals or they go, or maybe they might have a younger child, or a child with a pre-existing condition, or they might have had a pre-existing condition. And they just said, it's just not the safest thing for me to do this. And we certainly respected that and, kind of filled in the gaps.
With all these changes, have you found something that, hey, this might work better than what we used to do?
Why? I don't know about that. During the football season, we always dealt with the flu anyways, right? I mean, at this time of year, we were always dealing with, elbows only, no hugs, stay away from the girlfriend, all the things, because you can get a flu bug go through and lose 6 or 8 or 10 players in a week as well from the flu. And so the only positive may be that, the kids are better trained that once we have COVID under control to understand about, hygiene and face masks and distancing and decisions that you make. And so maybe that'll be a positive thing out of this, but it's really hard to find anything positive. I'm just being honest, to find anything positive. But again, the positive is, the kids' attitudes, that, practice doesn't feel a lot different. They still love being out there. They still listen to my bad jokes and, and tolerate me. So the positive is still having the kids out there.
Mike, a related question, if I could. So as an educator, you're all about life lessons, carrying some of these things into adult life. What kind of life lessons do you think are taught by a young person going through something like this?
I think perseverance is one that, you want to talk about with your kids. That I think flexibility. I think also to look on the bright side of things, to say, this is tough and there are people that are hurting and, But what are the positive things? What are those positive things? And then our theme for our football program has always, I shouldn't say always, but for the last 8 or 10 years has been the idea of men for others. That's more important than any wins that we have or any championships that we win. If we can develop young men who are going to be thinking of others first and be willing to demonstrate that, and it's hard in this COVID world to say, go and help somebody because you can't have that personal contact. But what are things we can do and look for those opportunities in even this real crisis that our country's going through? So I hope empathy and understanding that life it can change in a heartbeat, and you got to have that grace for people who are doing the best they can, and that people suffer from depression and people have a hard time with this. And you got to give that grace to people who this starts to overwhelm them. And I'm sure we have players like that. And I'm sure we have players' families who are like that, whether it be a financial burden, or anything else, depression in the family. And we certainly as coaches want to be there to be able to talk to kids about, what's going on in their lives, and, what are things that we can do to help or support them.
And what kind of impact will this have on some athletes' abilities to pursue higher education and compete at the college level? Does it damage their chances?
Well, if we're talking about scholarships, it's about 1% of the athletes that ever get scholarships. So, but there are kids that, obviously we're high profile programs with outstanding athletes, probably in every sport that we have. All of our programs have kids that dream of playing college athletics or performing in college athletics. I don't know. It's changed it for sure in terms of recruiting. Certainly the internet and the ability to send film and video and have all that information probably has changed it more in the positive sense than COVID has changed it back. But colleges are struggling of how to evaluate athletes. It's probably easier in swimming, Dan, probably when you can say, well, what's my time in this? And, but those sports where they have to go out and evaluate them and see them, it may impact them. But certainly at Division III, where there's no scholarships, in Division II, our kids will have plenty of opportunities. And I will tell you that schools, one of my greatest, things I'm most proud of, I guess I should say, is how colleges view our school in terms of athletics. Colleges view our high school as one of the elite schools in the country. They know if they have kids coming out of here who have succeeded academically, they're going to do outstanding in college. They know that we have really high character people, kids that are coming out of our programs, all of ours. When we look at Blake Cashman or Carter Coughlin or Ryan Conley, 3 kids that are in the NFL right now, I don't know that any of them were the best athletes, on their college teams. I don't know that any of them were elite athletes, but they were the super high character kids that were developed here at Eden Prairie. And that's what the NFL is looking for, those type of people to play in the NFL. And it's true wherever we go, in whatever sport we talk about. So that's one thing that I'm really, really proud about, is how our school is viewed throughout the country. And it is well known. Eden Prairie is well known all over the country. And if you say Eden Prairie High School, every college in the country will know where Eden Prairie High School is and the type of athletes we have come out of there. Sorry, I was bragging a little bit there. Sorry, Mark.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And so a question here that maybe gets us a little closer to wrapping up, and that's really, what can the community do to support high school athletics at this time if we can't turn out in droves, to watch contests?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think it's something we got to really look at, because I don't think this is going away anytime soon. How can we support? I think, if you have a neighbor kid that's playing a sport send them a note saying, I hope the season goes well, those type of support. And again, about relationships, maybe even as we get into the season, if there was signage that people could put up to say, we support Eden Prairie Eagles, sports or something like that. I think that, shows our kids that the community is still behind them. They still care about them. I wrote a letter today that went out to our student body about how sad I was to not have the event this Friday night. We have a home football game. And I think anybody in our community knows that a Friday night football game is not about football. It's about a community event. And, we have one of the best marching bands in the country. Our dance teams have been, at the highest state and national levels. Our cheerleaders are outstanding. And our boosters are there, selling product, clothing. It's a huge event. And that is a sad day when we're going to have 250 people only at the game. And I think it's a loss for Eden Prairie. I mentioned in the letter that on Friday nights, some of the biggest events that happen in Eden Prairie all year are the 4 home football games that we have, where we may average 6,000 to 8,000 people in and around the stadium and all that goes with it. So that's, I think any type of signs of support for that would be appreciated by our kids and our coaches.
What about the people that still want to watch the games? Have you figured out how to stream them yet?
Well, I've got a little camera. I'll put it up there. We're working on that. We do have a streaming partner right now, and tomorrow we're going to try and finalize that, and we'll get that information out. It's not going to be like a play-by-play broadcast. I heard Minnetonka, they supposedly had the greatest streaming ever, and none of it worked on Friday night. I think they had too many people tune in, and I had numerous family members trying to watch it, and they said it would just, you could watch it for a few seconds and then it would, be done. And so everyone's going to learn how to stream. That might be the positive thing that comes out of this, is we're all going to figure out how to stream eventually, because, we don't know how many fans we're going to have at hockey or basketball or wrestling. And we definitely got to get better at that so our community can watch these teams.
Well, this has been great. I want to thank Mike and Dan for their conversation tonight. Mike, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for your years of service as activities director, especially. And we look forward to your coaching on into the future. Dan, thanks for your long history of informing the Eden Prairie community about sports and so many things. We hope to continue reading your byline on into the future, if not here, then somewhere else. So thank you so much, the two of you, for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Well,
thanks, Mike.
I do want to let our attendees know that this is part of a series of public Zoom meetings that the foundation will continue on the afternoon of Wednesday, November 18th, when we tackle the subject of how LRT will change Eden Prairie. And speaking to light rail transit will be another hometown person, economic development manager for the city, Dave Lindahl. We also have EP by Zoom meeting scheduled for December 10th with the superintendent of schools, and January 7th with Jennifer Loon talking about keeping local reporting alive through Eden Prairie local news. You can visit the foundation website at epcommunityfoundation.org to learn more about our organization and its efforts, including the COVID-19 Response Fund, and a fund held by the Citizens Group that's creating a nonprofit news startup, the Eden Prairie Local News. You can also learn about our granting and impact in the community. So thank you for attending, folks. We really appreciate having you here tonight, and have a great rest of the evening. Goodbye.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks again, Mike.
Yep, good to see you, Dan. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mike.